All right, welcome back to the Atlanta Child Murders Revisited. It is 30 October. This is ATKID video number 12, and we're going to hopefully get close to finishing up on our geography here. But it's very, very important that we go over the geography and the places and the people and the names so you have an idea of what we're going to be talking about when I get into documents and details. All right, so here we go. Um, let's see. Hold on one second. Oh, gotta go pull this up again. I thought it was up. Sorry, I've been fighting my computer like the last hour. It's just been extremely slow. It's like an elephant sat on top of it. I don't know what's going on, and I'm just getting a little bit pissed off. But if you can bear with me here, I'm sorry. VIDEO. All right, so we're going to skip that part. So I was researching about the Ku Klux Klan in Atlanta, and I found out that they had this building built back in the 20s, and I think it was all the way up into the 50s. It was occupied by the KKK. It was the KKK called the KKK Imperial Palace at 2699 Peachtree Road, and I'm like, wow, that address sounds kind of familiar. And when you punch in this address here, you're going to find it's right there, right off Wesley Road. Okay. So if you kind of go to it's just up from this Peachtree Battle Creek Shopping Center. I used to go to the Peachtree Battle Creek Shopping Center and they had a movie theater there and a bookstore that I would go there. I don't think the movie theater's there anymore. It was kind of an artsy fartsy kind of theater. I think we went and saw Rocky Horror first time there. But they used to have this Imperial Palace, and this is where they would hold their KKK meetings. Okay, and we were literally right down the road from the governor's. I'm sure the governor back then at the time would attend these meetings. Now, what I find is kind of interesting because there's a Chabad right down the road. In case you don't know Chabad's kind of like this. I think it's like a Jewish cult. I'm Jewish, but I don't really consider Chabad people Jews. They're like it's this Russian cult that was developed in Russia, and they worship this. They think that uh, I can't remember the guy's name. The Baal Shem Tov was the Messiah or something like that, which is a totally non-Jewish concept. But anyway, so they have Chabad everywhere. You'll see them dancing. They got the little black cats and their white beards and stuff like that, and they have them in Israel. And it's a cult. That's what I think it is. It's a cult. Um, wait, wow, is it a church now? Yeah, I guess it's a church site now. So, wait, let's go up a little bit and then we'll go back. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, now it's a church. But I guess they must have torn down the palace and then they built this church. And, interesting. Wow. So there's Pete's. That can't be right. Yeah, that can't be right because it's going to be Wesley. Yeah. Okay. So that's across the street. So it was right here at Wesley and Peachtree. I think there's probably another church there, right? Yeah. There's a church right there. I don't think that's the original building. Um, but anyway, I find that interesting. You go all over Atlanta and it's steeped in all these racist KKK areas. Okay, but up in Buckhead. So let's go right here. We got 2734. This is actually right near this also. And this is John Chasen. He was an attorney for Williams when he was doing his appeals in the 80s. very, very briefly, I think he assisted Lynn Watley, but then basically Lynn Watley kind of got assigned that deal. And what you find out when you're dealing with Lynn Watley is that Lynn Watley gets into the case pretty enthusiastic, but then he realizes when he goes over all the evidence that Wayne did it. Wayne was the killer. There's no way around it. And he realized there was really nothing that he can do but, I mean, to get Wayne out of prison because Wayne was guilty as hell. But he was still getting paid. Okay. Garland and his associates were still paying him, okay, to keep Wayne on a leash, to keep him from blabbing, to keep his mouth shut, not to talk, and stuff like that. And so, they're paying him $500 a month or whatever the hell it is, like some kind of retainer. So, Lynn Watley, he's got other cases, and so he took the money. It's just a steady little bit of income coming in, not a lot, not a lot. You got some drinking money, some hookers and blow money, but that's basically what Wayne Williams was to Lynn Watley, was hookers and blow money. Okay, and occasionally he could you know procure himself a teenage girl prostitute or something like that. But that's basically what it was. There was this is Chasen's office right here. But Chasen kind of worked with him for a while. And you see all these attorneys, they all come in, like Dershowitz and that guy from Montana or whatever his name was. And they all come in thinking it's some kind of civil rights issue. That surely Wayne, because people don't look at reality the way it is. Okay, I'll just tell you the fact. On the left and on the right, most Americans, because we're raised, on these movies to believe bullshit. Okay, so most Americans aren't raised on reality. That's one of the problems. We have we all live in our concepts of the way we see the world, and then we spend our lives trying to bend the world or fight the world to make it what we believe. You see this with Donald Trump and his minions. They're going against the natural order of the way things really work and the way things really are in reality. And they're using force. Okay. Everything they do is always force, because when you're not in the groove, when you're not congruent with the way the world really works, it always comes down to force. Nazism, um, communism, Trumpism, MAGAism. It always comes down to force, because the natural world won't exist the way you want it to. So you have to use force and violence to turn that, to force it to your concepts and beliefs. So what you have is all these attorneys, they all kind of believed, oh, this poor little black guy was sold down the river by the police just to pin all these murders on him, and it was really some kind of racist guys. And then they get down here and they have their concepts, and I'll do it for free. And they come in and they listen to Wayne Williams' spiel, and they go and they look at the records, and they pull more records, and they interview more witnesses, and then they realize, oh shit, he really is fucking guilty. He is guilty as fucking hell. There's a lot of evidence nailing his ass. You got witness after witness after witness seeing him with the victims, and then all the physical evidence with the fibers. And but then there are, once you're committed to a certain concept publicly, you got to stay on that course, or you're going to look like a fool. Okay, so what you see is all these attorneys. They come to town, make a big splash. Oh, we're going to get Wayne out of it. He was railroaded and all this kind of stuff. And then they look at the evidence and they start talking to witnesses. And the main thing is, once they talk to Wayne, they realize there's no alibi list. Okay. Wayne, it's real simple. Write down, we're going to make a list of all the victims, where they were, the date and times and places they were last seen. We want you to go down and write down where you were and who you were with, and we're going to go interview and get depositions from all those alibi witnesses that'll prove that you were nowhere near where this person was last seen. Okay. And then they run into roadblocks because Wayne refuses to give them an alibi list. Okay. That's one of the main basic concepts right there of the defense is, you know, I'm sorry, Your Honor, there's no way my client killed this guy because he was at the San Suchi Lounge banging Nathaniel Cater when Jimmy Ray Payne was killed. So, they got him on videotape, and there's 2 patrons and 2 employees that saw him there in the back room. They even brought him condoms and champagne. So there's no way that Wayne Williams killed any of those kids. It's real simple. Even Wayne tries to pull the old alibi list when they try to nail him on Nathaniel Cater, and they say at first he was at home sick, and his parents lie under oath saying that. But then he changes his story after that when the witness comes out, and he goes, no, I was down at the Hotlanta Records selling a record at exactly 9:30, exactly when the employee of the Roxy Theater saw me coming out of the Roxy Theater holding hands with Nathaniel Cater, followed by 2 transvestite dressed men. Okay. Anyway, so poor little Len Watley and Chasen, Chasen, he realized, he looks at the evidence and he realizes, well, fuck, there's no way. Mary Welcome already realized this, but she was getting paid and told what to do. Okay. So she did it. The trial ended. She went her own way. She got the fuck out of Dodge. Okay. And all these other attorneys, they come along and see, that's what attorneys do. Like I said, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to look at the trial transcripts and look at the evidence. They're going to talk to their client, get his side of the story, and they're going to start talking to witnesses and looking at evidence. And they're going to start realizing real quick, especially when they don't get that alibi list, that he's guilty as hell. And so that's what they do. They make a big splash. They come down, oh, we're going to get Wayne out of jail, and then they just slowly disappear, and you never hear from them again. Why is that? Why? Does anyone ever follow up and say, hey, you were pretty certain that Wayne was innocent, but now you just kind of disappeared and, silently moved away. What happened? And they'll never give you a clear answer. Same thing with Chasen right here. That's what's going on. Len Watley just stays on because he is the connection between Thieves. You got Thieves, Garland, Len Watley getting his $500 a month retainer or whatever it is. And he never does anything because he realizes it's an impossible case. They may be able to get Wayne out on a technicality, but Wayne killed all those kids. He knows it. Everyone knows it. If Wayne didn't kill anybody, all those big Dershowitz, remember Dershowitz? He got people off on technicalities. Even though they were guilty as hell, he got them off on technicalities. Don't you think he would have found something? Don't you think all these big-time lawyers who looked at Wayne's case and worked on Wayne's case would have got Wayne off on something? But none of them ever do. Why is that? They all just silently walk away. Okay? Because they realize they've been bamboozled. Wayne's down here in prison screaming, entrapment, racism, rah, 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 I didn't do anything. I was framed by the FBI. It sounds like a big power move, right? It's a great story, right? If it's true, they come down, check it out. They realize it's not true. Why do you think they just silently walk away? So they didn't come forward and say, yeah, we looked at the case. We found out that Wayne was guilty as hell, and there was nothing we could do to get him out of jail because he killed all those kids. And so we're going back to New York to fight some legitimate injustice cases. Okay? Because that's what it's about. They come down to fight injustice, the system gone mad. Okay? The system, big brother, big system jumping on top of some poor little black guy. And that's not the case of what happened. Okay? All right. So we have this one here. This one I find really interesting. I'm going to get in more details on this one, but this one is called Nova Records and Entertainment. Okay. And it had two conceptions, one in January under Nova Records of 1985, and then another one of Nova Entertainment in about July, August of 1985. And it was set up at 3330 Piedmont Road under the name Antonio Ancasti, who was a lawyer, and Hunter Thomas was one of the owners. And underneath that, you've got the Gatons, okay? And I'll get into 3330 Piedmont and the Limelight a little bit later. We're going to go down this, but I find it interesting that 4, 5 years after Wayne Williams, 3 years after Wayne Williams is convicted, somebody takes his concept, okay, and they use that name and use it for exactly the same thing. Exactly. Okay. Um, Making records and starting music groups, managing music groups. Okay. So I find that extremely interesting right up here in Buckhead. And you're going to find it really interesting when you find out where it's at. But so this one here is very interesting. God, I should have left the dates in here, but I took the dates out for some of them. Anyway, so this one's called Modern Films of Georgia. Now, when Thieves was trying to go legit, he was trying to supposedly get out of the porn industry, but really he was just laundering his money. He started this movie company called Modern Films of Georgia. Now, under Modern Films, they had regular showing movies. They had a kung fu movie. They had another movie directed by the guy Roger Stone, the guy, whatever the guy's name was, Oliver Stone, that did one of his first movies. Okay, that was financed by Thieves, and under Modern Films. So they financed movies. They did Poor Eddie, I believe, in Athens. Um, they also got distribution rights for different movies. Okay, so someone else made them. They bought the distribution rights. Under Modern Films also, they had their pornography. Okay, we're running out of that. And then they have the child pornography. And all this was started at first at 341 Peachtree Avenue. And it was under the name of Michael Thieves and his girlfriend, who he'll run off. This is like 1972, okay? Patricia McLean. Now, Patricia McLean, okay, had been like a dance instructor, okay? And Michael Thieves, when you get rich, you start doing all these things that rich people do. You learn how to dance. And so he went and took his wife, and they went to a dance studio to learn how to dance. And there was Patricia McLean, and she was so beautiful. And he fell in love with her. And so she became his girlfriend number one. And my mom was probably like girlfriend number 3 or 4. She just didn't know it. I'm sure she figured it out. But Brenda was girlfriend number 1. Brenda was when he broke out of prison. She helped him get out of prison. She got the 100,000 transferred to her and bought the gun, bought the silencer, got the property address where Underhill and Galante were going to be doing their transaction there, and that's where they assassinated him. There's video. I have video of her going to a grand jury testimony and bond hearing, and there is Ed Garland right beside her talking to the press. Okay, and she's talking about, I just want to go back and feed my dog. My dog's been at home for a week, and I've been in jail for a week, and I want to go home and feed my dog. That's what she's saying. But there's Ed Garland defending her. And then who do we see Ed Garland and Brenda walking off with? None other than the attorney for Thieves when he comes under his federal indictment for murder charges in Rome and all these things. But anyway, so They start in 1972 at 341 Peachtree Avenue. They start that business. All right, so let's get that address here. And again, if you don't understand the complexity of this, if you can't connect the dots, you're never going to understand the Atlanta child murders, because it's modern films, my friend, that with its studios over at 881 Memorial, that's where they're filming the kids. That's where Wayne Williams is bringing the kids. That's where they're having the child pornography production going on right there. Okay? And it all starts at this little house in Buckhead. Okay? And when you get to this little house off of Peachtree Avenue, you're in the Buckhead Village. Okay? And right there in 1970 is Modern Films. Okay? With Patricia McLean. Maybe they rented this house. I don't know. There's nothing there now. But right here, just literally blocks away, is the Shadowlawn studio where Wayne will bring the kids 5 years later in 1977, 78, 79, 80. Right there. Literally up the road. Now, there's this other attorney besides Garland by the name of A.J. Block. Now, A.J. Block has his office over off of Paces Ferry Road. He has a really expensive nice house just north of that along the Chattahoochee River. And it's very interesting when you go in and look at all the businesses started by A.J. Block. Okay. Now, A.J. Block had this one called 41 14th Street. If you go down to 41 14th Street off of Peachtree, okay, you're down there where Thieves' territory is. Okay. But in 1992, he started this business at 265 Fall Road. Now, that address is just another office for A.J. Block in Buckhead. And it's going to be an address used by the Gatons. Okay. And I'm going to get into the Gatons in just a little bit. But it's literally right, like right here. Oh, no, right there. So I used to come here all the time, like right, I think it's right here. I don't know if it's there anymore, but there used to be a library, a Buckhead library, and I think it was right around here. Isn't it right around here? Oh no, it's on Buckhead Avenue. Yeah, like right here. There's a library, and it has like, or maybe it's on. Oh, I think it's on East Paces Ferry, like right in here. I used to come to that uh, library in the '90s. Okay, when I got out of the army, and I think I even went there in like 2002 or something like that. But I had no idea it was right around the corner there from where Wayne Williams was bringing the kids. So here we go. Now here we go again. Okay, we've got Nova Entertainment up at the Limelight, and then there it is right there. Cynthia and Maurice Gayton at 3060 Far Court. The lawyer for Nova Entertainment, okay, is none other than A.J. Block. Now, A.J. Block is just another mob attorney, okay? Mob and drug dealer attorney. All he does is he sets up these fake, businesses that are fronts for his drug clients and it's for his mob clients, okay? And so he is right. Where's that? Right there. Okay. Now, if you go to Far Road and you go to this area of Peachtree, you're going to run across right over on this side. You're going to run across like a Greek deli and a Greek market and a Greek restaurant. And there's all these Greeks. Okay. They're all cousins related to Michael Thieves. Okay, so when Thieves came to Atlanta, and then when he got big in the porn business, he had all this money. So he got a lot of his cousins to come from North Carolina. And when they were back in North Carolina, his dad had a restaurant. And so they were all into the restaurant business. Okay. And so he had them set up like a Greek restaurant, a Greek market, a Greek deli, all these different Greek type businesses. And each cousin had like one of the businesses. And he basically financed that business. He got them set up, got their inventory, and they're still in business today. And he did this right before he went into prison so he could launder his money. So all these Greek businesses that you go there, they're all cousins of Thieves. Okay, he put them there because this is where his area is. He lives just or lived just north of here. So that this is kind of the Greek Thieves core. It's called the Buckhead Triangle. Okay, and all his business stuff, like his little girlfriend sets up here. AJ Block is not associated with Thieves, but associated with Garland. He's just another mob lawyer. Okay. All right. And so they set up Nova Entertainment. Now, Cynthia and Maurice Gayton, I'm going to get into this in just a second, but there is, God, what's the guy's name? Do I have the guy's name here? Let's see. No, I don't have it. Okay. I'll get into this. I've got much more detail later, but I'll get into this. So you've got this guy by the name of Gayton, okay? And he's from Canada, from French Canadian from Montreal. So he goes down to Miami, and while in Miami, he starts this club, and he calls it the Limelight. He buys a club, changes it around, and calls it the Limelight. For some reason, he comes to Atlanta. I think he comes to Atlanta because it's an open territory. The mob is looking for someone to front a club. He's fronting the club. The mob is financing these clubs. Okay, they use them as fronts for prostitution and drug selling. So he comes up to Atlanta in about 1980. He starts this club called the Limelight. A lot of people knew it as the Disco Kroger because it was right next door on Piedmont, 3330 Piedmont, um, to a Kroger grocery store. I'll get into this in just a second, but more about Gayton. So Gayton, he gets that business going, but about the mid 80s, he leaves Atlanta and goes up and starts a club like the Limelight, like Studio 54 Limelight in New York. Okay. And then in the 90s, he gets busted for fronting drugs. He was a front. It was a front for the mob. They were selling drugs, running prostitution through these dance clubs. Okay. Just the same thing happened to Studio 54 exactly. Okay. Again, you can't run these clubs, you can't run these discos, these things without the mob sticking their fingers and getting involved. If you don't get involved, they're going to fuck you up. They're going to burn down your club, and they want to use your club as a front. And that's what they did. That's what they did with the Limelight in Atlanta. That's what they did with Gayton's club, Limelight in New York. And he gets busted and goes to jail, and then he gets deported after jail back to France, or excuse me, to Canada. So when he left Atlanta, he left his brother Maurice in charge of the Limelight. Maurice wasn't that interested in running the business, but he did it anyway because of the money. And so Cynthia and Maurice, about 1985, they set up a group called Nova Entertainment. About 3 years after Wayne Williams goes to prison, they take over the business and start doing exactly the same thing. They're recruiting young people, children, other people for singers, dancers, performers. It's the same fucking thing all over again, except, and I'm sure they're fronting for porn. They're, slipping some of these people for porn, but they're not killing them. That's the thing. That's where they learn their lesson. They're not going to kill them like fucking stupid Wayne Williams did, okay? And they also do create some music groups and some music business. Okay. Um, Eventually, the limelight shuts down. Maurice and Cynthia go back to Canada. I think if you look at on Google, Cynthia is like an artist or something like that up in Montreal or Toronto. But I find that very, very interesting. Let's see where we're going to go now. Okay, we got 30 minutes. So, also, right up here in this beautiful little triangle, the Buckhead Triangle, you have the Georgia Republican Party headquarters. Okay, I don't know if they were here back in the 80s when Wayne Williams was coming up here. Okay, but I find it incredibly interesting. Oh, hold on. That the Republican Party would be in this area. Okay, so let's see here. Where are they at? Yeah, so they're right over at Maple. Okay, so let's just kind of put everything together here. So we've got, all right, so we got modern films. This is a porn front. We've got uh, Michael Davis's Greek businesses right here. We've got Lansdowne or AJ Black and his concepts for Nova Entertainment right here. Um, we've got actually. Let me turn the satellite view here. Some reason it's not going there. Anyway, there's where the Republican Party. Right next door to the Republican Party is a Atlanta police substation. Okay, and right one street over is the Shadowlawn studio where Wayne was bringing the kids. Okay, and I don't know why this isn't switching to satellite, but anyway, and then literally right at the edge of this corner right here was the Cheetah 3 strip club owned by the Gambinos. Uh, and their lawyer was a lawyer by the name of Hirsch Friedman. I'll get into Hirsch Friedman in later on. But Hirsch Friedman was a mob lawyer, just like Garland. And of course, Garland's law office is right here. And right next door to Garland, well, two doors down, is Michael Davis's old girlfriend, Patricia McLean. She's got an interior decorating business right there. Right there is the limelight. And but I'll get into Hirsch Friedman some other time. But just real quick, Hirsch Friedman was a mob lawyer working for the Gambinos. He's basically runs legal interference for all the businesses. So what you'll have is there'll be a strip club, a porn theater, an adult bookstore, whatever, a dance club, whatever, that the mob has an interest in. Either they own most of it or they have getting paid uh, and offering protection to that business. Okay. So what Hirsch Friedman does is he handles the legal end. If there's any violations, they get raided by the police, somebody gets arrested, anything like that, Hirsch Friedman would go and he's being paid by the mob, would go and work it out for him. I also see this guy, Glenn Zell, doing exactly the same thing, working for the mob. Okay. And so what happens with Hirsch Friedman, though, is he gets approached by the GBI and the FBI. I think they get him on something, and he's wearing a wire, and so he's interviewing, and then they'll have, the mob will have these various different either their own guys or guys that they have under control to run these businesses for them. Okay, and and they'll go through these guys. Some of these guys get arrested, they go to prison, and they'll just get a new guy and change the paperwork over. The same Gambino's running. It's the same concept, but it's just got a new guy. So Hirsch Friedman was their legal guy, just like Garland is for Thieves, okay, and Glenzel and AJ Black. So Hirsch Friedman started wearing a wire, and the mob found out about this, and so they got this one guy. Oh, and also, this was very important. So they had this guy named McCullough who took over as Atlanta's solicitor after Mary Welcome left. Well, after Mary Welcome, okay, she finished the trial in 1982 with Wayne Williams. She wanted to go back and be Atlanta's solicitor again. So she starts running for Atlanta's solicitor. But guess who also wanted to be Atlanta's solicitor? Hirsch Friedman. Okay. So they knew that Hirsch Friedman was working for the cops because he had testified. He also was just out there, blatantly telling people, yeah, I work with the FBI and bust the mob and all this kinds of stuff undercover, and I'm a special agent and all this kind of shit. That's why you should elect me, because I'll run the mob out of town. I'll run all the scum out of town. Well, it's not too hard for the mob for the Gambinos to make a decision on that. So you got Mary Welcome, who'd been on the take with Garland before, and she's running. And then you've got this guy who used to work for you, but now he's turncoat working for the FBI. Who's your preference? Well, of course, Mary Welcome. So not surprisingly, Hirsch Friedman goes out about August 1982. Sticks his key in his car, and just like Jimmy Mays, when he cranks the car, boom, it blows up. Luckily, it didn't kill him. It just blows his legs off, okay? And we're going to read where he sues the FBI, saying he was an undercover agent, worked for the FBI, and should get some kind of compensation for getting his legs blown off. But needless to say, he lost that election, and I think another person won besides Mary Welcome. Maybe Mary Welcome won again. I'm not sure. But anyway, the guy that the mob didn't want to win got blown up. Imagine that. Isn't that crazy? But that was Hirsch Friedman right there. So let's see. So we're almost finished with Buckhead. I'm going to try to finish up with this video, and then we're going to go into the murders here. So you got the Atlanta. Okay, we got that. And now right here is 3140 East Shadowlawn. All right, 38 minutes. All right. So at this address, this was the main studio that Wayne would bring the kids to do his auditions. Okay. And it was literally right here. It was literally, yeah, let's see. It's going to pop up here in a second. Oh, wow. You see where that Trader Joe's is? Well, where that Trader Joe's used to be the Cheetah 3 strip club. Wow. Interesting. And it's literally the back parking lot is where the studio was. Interesting. So, but anyway, so you got Ed Garland and his office right there. You got the Republican Party right here. Right here is a substation of the Atlanta Police Department. Oh, and another interesting thing. There was, back in the 90s, the senior police officer in charge of the Atlanta substation in Buckhead. I'll go over this guy later. I can't remember his name, but he was a police chief, and he was either retired or he was just about to retire. And the news cameras, the news stations had cameras down off of Cypress Avenue. They were in a van, and they were recording, these the male prostitutes, as they would pick up people, okay? And they were trying to get the police to shut it down. For some reason, the police just wouldn't ever shut it down. So they went over there with cameras to show what was going on, put it on the news, embarrass the police into forcing them to do something. And Guess who they catch? But none other than the head of the um, Atlanta Police Department substation in Buckhead. He was down there, and they got him on a hot mic, okay, because they had one of the prostitutes wearing a mic. And he comes up and says to this boy, he's like 18, 19 years old. This guy's in his 50s. He says, "Yeah, I want you to get in my car and we're going to go back and I want you to whip me." And he's like, "What? I want you to whip me hard, you know?" And he's like, "How much to do that?" And so something happened and he got scared and drove off. But they got the former police chief, the head guy of the Atlanta substation right here, okay, down there off of Cypress Avenue. And now we kind of understand why no one ever went after the prostitutes there on Cypress Avenue. And I always remember this. I watched this show with this mob guy, and he said, if you ever want to do anything illegal, okay, like have a safe house or drug house, do it near the police station, okay? Because nobody, your enemies, your competition, even the police are not going to mess with you there because they're it's too dangerous. You know, the police are right across the street. So many times the mob would have a drug house, a safe house where they would keep people that were the police were looking for in these houses right across from the police station. Of course, they had like, you know, say like if it was the safe house was like right here. So it was crossing the police station. So they'd have a little, you know, driveway to come around the back. They would put the car up to the back here, unload, offload their drugs, put it in the van, drive off. Nobody's going to rob you or raid your drug house because you're right across from the police station. And then if you had people that the police were looking for, you would drive them in the van. They'd get out in the back here, go into the house, would stay in the house. They wouldn't come out. If you're going to smoke cigarettes, you're going to smoke out back. And that way, the police are never going to be looking for you there. They're going to be looking for you on the other side of town. They're never going to be looking for you right across from the police station. So, but I remember this guy saying this, and it was fascinating. I was like, wow, that's incredible. But right here is 3140 Shadow Lawn. And I haven't found any mob connections to the owners of this place. But two things about this is that the lady who, there was a husband and wife that ran this studio, okay? And so Wayne was constantly bringing in the kids, okay? One thing about this studio, they said, is that the recording studio, they couldn't, even though there was a glass there, they couldn't see anybody in the studio because there was like equipment in front of it. So they could hear them. And so Wayne would bring the kids in and say, okay, start recording. And then they would push a button and start recording the kids. But they never saw any of the kids, which I don't believe because, you know, if you're in a recording room, there's a side door. You're going to go out to the break room and all this kinds of stuff. You're going to see at least one or two of these kids, right? But they said they never saw any of the kids. They would hear them, but because of the way the studio was set up, they would never see them, and then they would record them. And I wonder if the police ever got recordings of any of the children that were killed. See, this is never brought up in the trial because Wayne Williams was never charged with the killing of the kids. But I'm certain that many of the kids that were killed were recorded at this studio right here. And I'm reading like an FBI report of a guy who came up here, and he said while he was, you know, either coming in or going out of the studio, he saw a green station wagon parked like right here, and Wayne Williams was bringing out equipment, recording equipment, and putting into the um, the station wagon. So there we have the green station wagon again, owned by James Comento, doing exactly what another witness saw Wayne Williams doing at a talent contest over there off of Campbellton Highway. And also the same green car that Wayne and Louis Getter were seen getting into. Also the same green car that a woman and her husband saw Wayne, Louie Getter, and Jimmy Ray Payne over at Southview Cemetery driving through and almost hitting them. Now, this woman who worked the studio, owned the studio, her and her husband, they did the FBI records and they found out it was like $500 a month Wayne was paying. He had like at least one session every month, or every week, excuse me, except for the month of March, okay? Which in the month of March, there were kids being killed and adults being killed every week. So there were no studio sessions in the month of March. There were like almost every week before that. And so when you work that out, it works out in 1981, Wayne was paying about $500 a month just for this studio. He was going to 5 different studios, folks. The question is, where is he getting all that money? Because he's not making a dime. There's no album. There's no recording contract. There's no record. There's no music group. The Gemini group only existed as a gang of people that had the birth date Gemini, Jimmy Howard, Wayne Williams, and a couple other people. But none of these kids ever were put into a group. But yet Wayne Williams, every week for 4 years, folks, was bringing kids here and recording them, taking pictures, taking video, taking down their name, taking down their vital statistics, height, weight, likes, dislikes, all kinds of stuff. And we know from testimony that Wayne would groom them and then ask them, like, do they have a girlfriend? Did like boys, like girls? All 9, 10, 11-year-old kids, he's asking this, folks. So I think he was grooming them and setting up some kind of portfolio that he was either shopping around or I don't know. Who knows what was going on with Wayne there. But right at the back of this is the parking lot for the Cheetah 3 Club, owned by the Gambinos also, which is right up the road there. And if you literally, there's Aldi's right there. If you go up right here and just, actually, I'm sorry, there's the parking lot for Aldi's. And if you just walk straight across there, you are at Ed Garland's office. Isn't that funny? So I haven't found any connection between this studio and Ed Garland or Thievis or Jimmy Jen or anything like that. But I did find the home address. And if you look at the home address for this lady here, you find out she's literally around the corner from where Patricia McLean had an address up in Ackworth, I believe. Is it Ackworth? Yeah. Oh, another thing too, I forgot. This lady said that, yeah, and see if you go right here, you're in the back parking lot of the Cheetah 3 strip club. Okay. Actually, let's go here and see. I never went around the back here of this. God, I can't wait to go to Atlanta and go to all these addresses. But this lady said that about April, okay, that Wayne Williams came in and he had all these scratches on his arms. And she asked him what happened. They were fresh scratches. And she said that he told her he had fallen down and into some bushes. Okay. Oh, wow. Look at that. There's the Trader Joe's. Okay. Now, back in the 80s, that right there was the Cheetah 3 strip club. This was Hirsch Friedman's club that he was the legal advisor on. Okay. And literally right at the back of this studio is the Cheetah 3 strip club. And this strip club is being run by, a guy named Coppola. And Coppola got in all kinds of trouble for drugs and mafia hits and all kinds of stuff. And there's the back door right there, literally facing of the studio, facing the Cheetah 3 strip club. But now it is a Trader Joe's. That's too bad because I like Trader Joe's. I go to Trader Joe's all the time. Well, when I was in Portland. So we got 10 minutes. So let's see if I can get through some more here. All right. We'll just jump over if I can. God, why is it freezing up here? Wow. Anyway, um, just got a few more things. So got that Atlanta Police Department. I don't know if it's the Atlanta Police Department still, but let's just take a look real quick. And what's so crazy is I used to go right. See, there's another Greek restaurant right there. I bet that's owned by one of the Thivases. Is either that building? Yeah, I think it was this building right here. Used to be an old Crystals. Okay, that we would go to and eat at because we would come up here and before they put in this Highway 400, we found a back way to Lenox Square. Instead of having to go up Lenox Road, we would get off um, at Cheshire Bridge and go up Piedmont, go to this Crystals and eat at the Crystals because we were really poor, didn't have any money. And then we would go up East Paces Ferry Road right here. And there used to be a road that came up right here to Lenox Parkway, and then we could park right there going to Lenox. But yeah, I used to go there, God, all the time, folks. Wow, crazy. Okay, I'm going to have to finish this up later because I'm running out of time here. But I did want to God, it just, why is it so, why is it all blurred up in these certain areas? Well, crazy. All right, so let's take a look here. Okay, I was always around this area. Okay, so right there's the police substation, and right here, is it right there? God, I just can't get it to come up though. Wow, this is crazy, really slow. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there's Shadowlawn. If you go up and just walk across here, I don't think this was here before. There was something else, but literally, Wayne could have walked over. Okay, so here, Wayne could have walked over to the Cheetah 3 Club, chatted with Hirsch Friedman and Coppola, or he could have walked over and chatted with, he could have took the kids over there too. Or he could have gone over and discussed his legal case or any kind of legal problems with Ed Garland right there. Okay, so let's take a look here at Ed Garland's office. Now, again, I'm not saying that Ed Garland was directing the killing of the children in the Atlanta child murders. Not at all. He may not have had any idea what was going on. Okay? Not a clue. But again, the question you have to ask yourself is why is a rich mob and drug lawyer and you look at Ed Garland's clients, okay? They're almost exclusively mob and drug dealers. Okay? There's Stevens, like probably 60% of his work was dealing with thieves, fighting all the way to the Supreme Court. It was, hold on one second. See how they got it? You grow these trees here, so it kind of blocks off being able to see anybody, and then if you got clients in here bringing their limos and stuff like that, see this Garland Law Building. Now Garland's retired, but his son is taking over the business, just like Garland's dad. Oh, Garland's dad was Reuben Garland, okay? And Reuben Garland was the guy that defended the Temple bombing, okay? But out of these offices right here, okay, some of the most notorious drug dealers pornographers walk through these doors and put down suitcases of money to be defended by Garland. Okay. Garland always found a loophole. He was a master at getting his clients out of jail. Unfortunately, he couldn't get Thieves because Thieves was just too reckless. Okay. But he did get all of the charges against Thieves for interstate transportation of pornography. All of those reverse, dismiss, taken care of. But Thieves, you've got these three murders. They were to pin him on that, and you can't get him out of that. But right there, okay, that's where the magic happens. That's where the law comes together with the criminal world, and they use their money and power to get away with literally murder. Okay, and what else was I going to say here? And Garland, like I said, the reason that you can watch porn on your phone or on your computer at home on the internet is because of this guy in this office right here. Whether you like that or not, I think it's personal freedom. I think it's, I'm always been a person of the more freedom, the better. Okay. Except, of course, don't be fucking having sex with kids and filming kids and shit like that. But the more freedom we have in this country, the better a country we are. That's why people will risk, getting shot and killed and their families murdered so they can escape and crawl to freedom across, you know, the DMZ in North Korea. That's why, you know, these dictators around the world are trying to shut down freedom because of American freedom. America, before Trump, was a beacon of light and hope. You know, the concept of, that's why all these people come to America, because they're not going to find the freedom and the concepts that they find in other countries. It may not exist exactly the way we want it, but the concept of freedom exists. And from the concept, you can build anything. That's why people, you know, will risk their lives to come to America. And essentially, that's what Garland was fighting for. Now, he's like the devil in that movie, what was it? The devil wears the suit or something like that. But, they're mercenaries. They fight for whoever will pay them. But Garland, long ago, back in the 60s and 70s, he decided he was going to be a mob lawyer. Okay. Anybody who was up against the government, he was going to help them. Okay. And maybe that's why he helped Wayne Williams. I don't know. But again, it doesn't help your client list to defend a broke, indigent, crazy, black child serial killer. You're not going to get more clients doing that, but that's what he did for some reason. And I think it all had something to do with Thieves, knowledge that Wayne Williams had about Thieves' organization, the Gambinos. It had to be. And you look at everybody involved with Wayne Williams and his defense, they all branched out from Garland. Mary Welcome worked right here in this building as an intern while she was trying to get her law license. Okay. Axum and Fryer were all friends with Garland. AJ Block is a friend of Garland. Uh, Glenn Zell is a friend of Garland. So they're all, they all kind of know each other. They have this legal criminal alliance. Okay. But whether he knew about what Wayne Williams was doing in the Atlanta child murders, I don't know. I don't think it really matters. The fact is that he defended him in the afterthought for no reason, for no money. Anyway, that's enough for now. We're going to continue with Buckhead on the very next one. That'll be the last one.